We're back, baby! 2025, first card of the year. Let's start this sucker off on a win streak. Am I right, boys? Links are in the description. Let's get to that first fight. Now, here we find ourselves at lightweight, where Joe Solecki has stepped in on short notice to take on Nurullo Aliev, who was originally slated to face Yanel Ashmoz, who has pulled out. Injury, I do believe. So Solecki's in. Aliev hasn't fought in almost 2 years, which typically is not really what you want to see, but he's still young. I think he's like 24 years old now. So taking time off at this point in his career means he's probably developing, you would assume. I know he had some issues. There was a potential issue with like some sort of suspension. I don't know that it was like a PED thing or anything, but I think he got suspended for something. Don't remember. That might not be right, but I think he did. And then he also had an injury in there as well. But that's plenty of time to work on some stuff, get better at what you're doing. And being 9-0, it's a good time for that. On the other side, we got Joe Solecki. He's not on the best run as of late, 2-3 in the last 5, but he's looked pretty good in some of these fights. In the wins, he's looked great. In the losses, yeah, some of them haven't looked the best. But point is, he steps in on short notice. This is going to be a grappler versus grappler matchup. When we start on the Nurullo Aliev side, the dude's got solid grappling skills. His takedowns are pretty much what get him through fights because he likes to get the takedown. He'll chain wrestle those takedowns. If he doesn't get the takedown, he'll push you up against the cage and start working his takedowns from there. Over and over, looking for the shot. Now, once he eventually gets the takedown, he's got very smothering top pressure, and he'll work to control the limbs, trap those limbs down, and then start landing his ground and pound. But he does not start throwing until after he's got your limbs trapped. He's got you completely controlled. It's very position-first, safe style grappling. Now, a lot of people find that boring. It wins in fights. The dude's 9-0 for a reason. Do with that information what you will. He's got decent striking. He's got a decent jab, decent leg kick, but he's not really looking to strike. He pretty much just avoids striking at all costs. Rightfully so. He is a grappler through and through, and that is what he's best at. You might as well do what you're best at if you can. But yeah, he does have a couple of tools there if he needs them. They're just not that great, at least from last time we saw him. Now, like I said, it's been almost 2 years since this guy's fought in the UFC. That could be a difference, a drastic difference at the age of 24. On the other side, Joe Solecki. He's a more complete product at this point. We know what we're going to get. He's been around the UFC for a while. He is a solid grappler as well. Decent takedowns are not as good as Aliev, but the dude, Solecki, has some serious jiu-jitsu ability, especially for MMA, right? He's got good top pressure. He's really good at locking down and controlling limbs, much like Aliev does, except Solecki, instead of looking for ground and pound, typically is looking for the submission or, stay safe, control. He is a bit of a grinder, so he can also do that control first style, but he's going to look for submissions, whereas Aliev isn't really looking for a submission. He's looking to control you and then land ground and pound. Solecki, control, submission, especially once he takes the back, because once he takes the back, he starts looking for that rear naked choke, and he does a pretty good job at finding that throughout his fights. Decent striker. It's most of the time set up by his grappling threat. He can catch you off guard because you're worried he's going to get the takedowns. I don't know that that's going to be there in this one. I think this is just pretty much gone. I don't think the grappling threat is a problem because who else wants to grapple? His opponent. Solecki's known to throw a lot of single shots and doesn't have a ton of power. On the feet, I give this slight edge to Aliev, and I don't know really that either one's going to want to be on the feet anyway. So anyway, it comes down to grappling. Who do I think is going to get on top, and who do I think is going to control? Who do I think is going to win? Honestly, in this fight, I think Solecki is very much submission dependent, and I don't know that he gets it here. So for me, Nurullo Aliev is the pick. I like that one a lot. Let me know what you guys think. The short notice for Solecki does also give me a little bit of a worry there, but I'd love to hear your opinion in the comments. I'll see you in the next fight. We got a women's strawweight matchup next between a couple of ladies who are both 4-1 in their last 5 fights. That one loss for each of them being their only loss in the career. Now, something you're going to notice, and this is just going to be a moment for me to highlight some of you folks that are watching. I just switched to this blue marker here because my other marker has dried up in the month off that I haven't hardly used the marker board. Maybe it just didn't seal right. So that's that. Switch to this. Thanks to the channel members, I'll pull from that channel membership account. To get, those of you that are paying $2.99 a month, you guys are the ones purchasing the markers. So after this, I'll go buy me some more markers. We can go back to the black after this. If you really like the blue marker, let me know. We can switch to a blue marker. That's fine too. But let's break down the fight. Fatima Kline, she comes in. She's 4-1 in her last 5. Like I mentioned, she's a solid striker. She's a solid grappler. She's taking on Victoria Dudakova, who's also good in both of those areas. She's a good striker and a good wrestler. When we break down this fight, for Fatima Kline, solid striking, good volume. She's got an active jab. Her kicks are going to all levels. Combinations, she puts her punches and kicks together in combination, which is Very impressive, especially for a fighter who's only got 7 career MMA fights. That's very important to be able to do that. And she doesn't come from a striking background. So she does a good job with her striking, even though she is primarily a grappler. She's a solid grappler, like I mentioned. She has good takedowns, good back takes, constant pressure on the mat, and she's also really good at transitioning from position to position. She also has good cardio. That's something we saw in her debut fight. She took it on short notice. She was still putting out effort, doing what she needed to do in the 3rd round, taking on that a fighter up a weight class in Jasmine Jasudavicius, where she was completely out-muscled, completely outsized, and she took it on short notice. She was still going after her in the 3rd round. Now, that's exhausting to do that. So good for her. Showed some stuff, even though she lost. So the one loss, yeah, got to happen eventually, right? On the other side, Victoria Dudakova, she's had some interesting things because I'm going to mark this, that she's faded in high-paced fights in the past. But it sounds like she's just always got a staph infection. So I don't know. She's had staph infections in 2 of her UFC fights. Maybe that's why she's fading, but also why do you have so many staph infections? Something to look into. Victoria Dudakova, though, she's a good striker, good forward pressure, good long, straight punches, puts together boxing combinations, durable. We saw her fight through injury to get wins in the past. Does a good job there. Also through staph infections. Good wrestling. The body lock is probably her best method of getting the fight to the mat. So if she can get in tight, get that body lock, and drag it down, there you go. Good control, good back takes. She's very active in attacking the submissions, but one thing that's an issue is if she's going for the body lock and she isn't able to get the takedown on her terms, she will pull her opponent on top of her and initiate the grappling sequence from her on bottom. That is a nightmare for her here. So if you're a fan of Dudakova here, you want to play the massive underdog, because last I checked, Kline is currently like a minus 1,000 or something, which is wild. But if Dudakova pulls Kline on top of her, she's done for. That's a horrible idea. Honestly, in this fight, I think it's a case of Kline is going to be better everywhere the fight is, but Dudakova probably shouldn't be this big of an underdog, but it's going to be one of those things where it's like, yeah, Kline's probably still going to win. So we're taking Fatima Kline. She is probably the better fighter wherever this fight takes place, with more in the gas tank. I have to side with her here, but I understand minus 1,000 is a hard number to get to. So let me know what you guys think. I'm taking Kline. I'll see you in the next fight. Next up, light heavyweights, Magomed Gadzhiyasulov takes on Bruno Lopes. Now, Lopes, 4-1 in his last 5, only 1 loss on the career. That was his first attempt on the Contender Series, where he got knocked out by Brenton Ribeiro, who's also in the UFC. Now, gets another shot on the Contender Series. Here he is, now making his UFC debut. He's taking on another Contender Series vet, and that is Magomed Gadzhiyasulov. He's 9-0, undefeated, 5-0 in the last 5, of course. Should be a good matchup. A couple of guys who are early in their UFC career, looking to see who's moving up the ladder, who's going to kind of stay where they're at. Now, for Lopes, he's a good striker, good forward pressure, plenty of volume. The guy strikes well to all levels, puts together combinations. His one little drawback on the feet is that when he starts throwing hooks, he kind of leaves himself wide open. So that is a drawback for him. On the grappling, he's got good takedown defense. He's got good ground and pound, good top pressure, and he's got a decent body lock takedown, but oftentimes for him to get his grappling going, he ends up being the one getting taken down. Although, like I said, he can go to that body lock. He's pretty much a good all-arounder. He looked really good early in his career, and then he's had a few fights as of recent where he just seems just a little off. I don't know. Maybe I'm the only one that thinks this, but let me know if you agree with that in the comments below. Now, for Gadzhiyasulov, dude is going to be a minute winner through and through. The guy's a solid striker who circles really well while he's landing his nice straight shots, picking people apart with kicks. He will back up when he circles off. I don't like that so much, but he does a good job at just kind of maintaining his range. Uses the front kick really well. Uses those body kicks, those roundhouse kicks to the body extremely well. Got good, clean, long, straight shots. And then he'll mix in a spinning elbow when you start coming in on him. And he does a really good job at setting that up. Makes it hard for you to close the distance, because at range, he's probably landing on you and staying out of range of your shots. But then once you come in, if you're worried you're going to get hit with that spinning elbow, because that is a put your lights out kind of technique, it does give you a little of that apprehension. So he does a good job with that. Let's put it that way. Good grappling. We saw that where he's mixed that in as of recent, where he's mixing his takedowns, get his top pressure, but he's definitely a strike first kind of fighter. I think this fight's going to be basically Lopes trying to chase Gadzhiyasulov most of the fight, trying to land a big shot, maybe get the fight to the mat. And I think he's going to just lose too many minutes, and it's going to go to a decision where we get Gadzhiyasulov getting his hand raised for just doing more and being able to outpoint Lopes. So that's where I'm at. I'm taking Gadzhiyasulov. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next one. Next, we've got Ernesta Kareckaite taking on Nicolle Caliari. 4-1 in the last 5 for Caliari. 3-1 in a draw for Kareckaite. Now, this is a good matchup. This is an interesting one between a couple of Contender Series alums. We've got a lot of them on this card. For Caliari, she showed on the Contender Series that she's been leveling up as of late. She had good striking before. That was new. It's the grappling that we saw her really excel in a matchup where she should have been the fighter with the disadvantage in the grappling. Well, she got a submission win over somebody who's known for being a good grappler. So that was impressive. But let's break this down. She's a good striker with good footwork, puts together combinations, and she can put her punches and kicks together extremely well when she's doing that. Now, I believe she comes from some sort of Muay Thai background. Now, I'm not entirely familiar with it. I didn't watch any of her Muay Thai fights, but it sounds like she has that Muay Thai background. Her output, it starts out slow, but it builds as the fight goes on, and she builds really well in that late second and early third round, and then by the end of the third round, she's really got a good output going. Decent grappling. Her cage push is good. She's got really good ability to control opponents there, and she can trip them down to the mat from there. And she will attack submissions, which, there you go. She did a good job of that in her last one, but she can still be taken down. We've seen that, and then we've also seen her be able to be held down if she's not able to create that scramble and get the submission. So for her, this could be something in the future that could be a problem, but I think in this fight, she's going to be the one with the grappling upside here, because in the striking department, that's where this is going to be a more competitive fight. For Kareckaite, she's a good striker as well. She stays extremely light on the feet, and she's always keeping her head moving and bouncing around on her toes, things like that. So she makes it really hard for people to really corner her and pin her down. She does do a good job at feinting, setting up her strikes. She's got quick strikes as well, and the knees are some of the best weapons that she has. She also, I didn't write it up here, but she does have a pretty significant height and reach advantage. That reach is ridiculous. So that is something that's going to be a battle for Caliari to be able to close that distance. It can be easier for some than others, but in this one, I think that's going to be tough, because she doesn't really, even though she has very good, good movement and things like that, good footwork, that's a big gap to close, especially if you don't have the ability to shoot range takedowns well. And even though we've seen her do okay in the grappling, the trips are what she does a good job of getting the fight to the mat with. It's going to be hard for her to have that threat of shooting a long range double leg to force out a sprawl to close distance. She's not going to be able to do that super well, but she's going to have to use her striking skills to close distance if she can, because the reach advantage against somebody that stays light on the toes and keeps their head moving, keeps moving really extremely well, it's going to be hard to close that distance. So keep that in mind. She does have decent grappling. The sprawl is there. Like I said, she has a pretty good sprawl because she's had to learn to keep the fights on the feet. But the problem is she can be held against the cage once you get her there. She can be taken down if that sprawl, after the sprawl, if that doesn't end the sequence, she can be taken down on the second shot, things like that. But she's got great cardio. This girl can put up numbers. And honestly, I think that cardio mixed with the length advantage and the slight striking edge is why she's the favorite. I'm going to side with her here, but there is a ton of value on the Caliari side. She is the underdog at a pretty high clip. I gotta take Kareckaite for the pick, though, because that's what we're trying to do is pick winners. I could be wrong on this one, but I do think she's going to be able to maintain range long enough that this fight ends up being her decision to win. So let me know what you guys think. I'll see you in the next one. Next, we've got another short notice matchup where Jacobe Smith steps in on short notice to take on Preston Parsons at welterweight. Interesting fight because Parsons was originally slated to take on another Contender Series alum who won this past season on the Contender Series in 2024. Jacobe Smith also won on Contender Series 2024. He takes the spot of Gustafsson, who was originally in this matchup. Now, Gustafsson is out, I think, with a broken neck or something like that. If the reports were true, that's pretty wild. Smith steps in. Guy's undefeated, 9-0, 5-0 in the last 5. He's taking on a guy, Preston Parsons, who was already ready for this matchup, who's 2-3 in the last 5. Not the best 5 on in, but he's a good fighter with some skills. And we'll talk about the skill breakdown here in a second. But I'd like to say this fight is at around a week's notice, from my understanding. So that does play a bit of a role. Smith on this, step in here. He doesn't really cut a lot of weight to make 170. I don't think the weight cut's going to be an issue, but he hasn't really had time to prepare for the style of Parsons. So keep that in mind. When we look at Smith's skills, dude's a good striker with good forward pressure and a ton of power. This dude literally has some of the most crazy highlight knockouts that was going into the Contender Series this past season. He's got some wild knockout power. It's one shot, you're done. And he's also got some pretty good heavy leg kicks, and he'll use those as trips as well. Dude's striking's pretty good, especially for a guy that is a wrestler first. And nine fights, 9 wins in his MMA career. The dude hasn't been doing it that long. So the fact that he's been able to blend his arts so well, which I mentioned right here, that is impressive. Now, he's a solid wrestler with very good takedowns and tons of mat returns. So when guys start to get back up on him, he rips them right back to the mat, and he's got cardio to do that for 3 rounds, absolutely no problem. When he gets on top, he's got really good top pressure, does a good job at like floating from position to position as his opponents kind of shift underneath him as they try to create space. He just floats to the next spot. Makes it really tricky for guys to get up. And when they do get up, they're going to get mat return. Good ground and pound. He uses the elbows extremely well, and his killer instinct is right up there with some of the best. On the other side, Preston Parsons. He's got a similar skill set, maybe not the power of a guy like Smith, don't get me wrong, but on the feet, decent striker, good forward pressure. He puts together some basic combinations, a heavy leg kick in his own right. He's also got some solid wrestling, some solid grappling, powerful takedowns. He does take the back extremely well, and he does chain his submission attempts together. I would say he's the more submission-heavy threat here in this matchup, but Smith is going to be the more, I don't know, powerful, heavy-handed striker, I would say. So, the knockout maybe on Smith's side, the submission maybe on the Parsons side, if we're just looking between the two. Honestly, I know it's short notice. I think Jacobe Smith gets this one done. I think he shows that he's a very impressive prospect. And I think Parsons, although he's a good fighter, isn't going to have the answer for a guy like Smith who can do it everywhere. So give me Jacobe Smith to win this one. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. I'll see you in the next fight. At lightweight, Thiago Moises takes on Trey Ogden. 3-2 in the last 5 for Moises. 3-1 in a no contest for Trey Ogden. Interesting fight here because both of these guys seem to kind of be finding their spot in the division right now. Moises, every time he takes a step up, kind of gets knocked back down. When he gets knocked back down, then he beats those guys and gets back up. Ogden was kind of just not really looked at as a high-level fighter, and he's just gone on a pretty good run. I mean, he should be 4-1. That no contest was a win, if you ask me, or anybody, honestly, except for the athletic commission at that particular venue. But for Trey Ogden, the dude has looked incredible as of late, career best, actually. When we look at this here, he's a good striker. Trey Ogden is. He's got a good, good volume, nice jab, kind of stays at range, does what he needs to do, keeps his guard high, mixes in a decent leg kick. He doesn't do anything flashy, does what he needs to do to get things done. That's how he's gonna operate. Solid grappler though. The dude's got solid takedown entries. He doesn't make a lot of mistakes on the entry. Now, he used to be a guy that could get subbed pretty easy. Most of his losses, or I guess half of his losses, are by submission. He's gotten rid of that. He's been very safe on top. And what makes me think that, I probably should have wrote that down, he's safe on top while he has good top control, is mostly that fight with Kurt Holobaugh. Because I know, say what you will, Kurt Holobaugh is getting older. The dude is extremely dangerous off his back. And I'd say outside of the top 5, maybe top 10, outside of the top 10, he's one of the most dangerous guys off of his back. And his resume says that. And if you don't agree with me, go back and look at his resume. He's extremely dangerous off his back. Ogden just stayed safe, boring, cruised it out, and did what he needed to do. And I think if he uses that same path here, he might actually have some pretty good success, because if you can control a guy like Holobaugh and stop him from working off of his back, you can do something similar to Moises, I do believe, although Moises does have the youth. Now, he is a choke specialist. He goes for that arm triangle choke predominantly, and I think that's because he can maintain his top position until he gets the choke to the point that he says, okay, if I go for this now, I'm not giving up my spot. So that's what Ogden likes to do. He's a very safe fighter all around. On the other side, for Moises, he's a decent striker. I would give him good striking if his volume wasn't kind of just hit or miss. Just totally depends on the fight. He's got good combinations, good kicks, good leg kicks in particular. If he uses those leg kicks to success in this fight, he might do pretty well. But the problem with that is it's going to come down to the volume. How is he going to put that volume out? And the grappling is a solid grappler. He's got a massive toolbox down there. Decent takedowns, not the best, but decent. Good scrambling ability. He's able to reverse positions, and he's also dangerous from his back. Ultimately, in this fight, though, Trey Ogden's on the way up, and if you give, I know he's like 35, but if you give me this guy as a big underdog, which he's like plus 170 right now, I'm taking Trey Ogden, especially with the way that this guy's been performing. I think he's going to do what he needs to do in this fight. Stay safe, not do anything risky, and cruise to a boring decision. Give me Trey Ogden to win a boring decision. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you in the next one. Middleweights next. Marco Tulio makes his UFC debut after 2 stints on the Contender Series. Ihor Potieria. He's been here for a bit. He's 1-4 in his last 5 fights. Let's start on the Potieria side. He's a good striker, good forward pressure, who kind of likes to strike in bursts. He's got pretty good power in the hands, but his striking defense has left a lot to be desired, particularly with his kick checks. Doesn't really do it. So gets kicked in the legs quite a bit. not really good for him. He starts extremely fast, but he does fade as fights go on. Not really because his cardio is just horrible. I think it's just because he starts too fast and he puts too much of a pace out there. Because we have seen him go later in a fight and not just die when he has slowed it down a bit. Now, he does tend to be a fast starter, like I said, and he will burn himself out, especially if the opponent's giving him a lot of resistance. On the other side, Tulio, good striker as well. He's got good power. He's got pretty good volume for a guy that has that kind of power, a very dynamic attack. His kicks are some of his best weapons, particularly the leg kick, which we've already established that Potieria doesn't really check those very often. In the grappling, he's going to be the better grappler here is Tulio. He's a solid grappler with decent takedowns, good ground and pound. He sweeps well if he ends up on the bottom, and he kind of floats on top and uses that to kind of get from position to position, lands his ground and pound, does what he needs to do. Now, if you're Tulio, the obvious path to victory is the grappling. Get the takedown, get the win. Potieria has shown grappling deficiencies in the past. On the feet, Potieria is live, but Tulio should be able to match the striking. It's just going to be a lot closer. For me, because Tulio has more ways to win, I'm going to pick him to win here. The line is crazy, so do with that information what you will, but we're taking Tulio. Let me know what you guys think. I'll see you in the next one. Next, at 125 pounds, both of these fighters are 3-2 in their last 5. Jose Johnson takes on Felipe Bunes. Bunes is going to be a good striker. He's got decent power, pretty darn good leg kick, and he really likes that 2-3 combination. The problem is his volume can sometimes let him down on the feet. He does have the ability to get takedowns, and he strikes his way into those takedowns, as you see there. He does have solid jiu-jitsu once the fight gets to the mat, and particularly his submission attacks. I do really like the way that he goes for the triangle armbar sequence where he goes back and forth with those. Does a good job with that. Now, on the other hand, Jose Johnson, the guy is a good striker, and at range, the dude's got tons of power. He kicks to all levels, which is kind of easier to do when you're over 6 foot and you're at flyweight where most of your opponents are like 5'5". I think Bruno is like, 5'7", something like that. But still, it's easier to kick a guy in the head when he's multiple inches shorter than you. Something to keep in mind. So he can do that. His knee's up the middle. Pretty good there as well because don't have to lift that knee super high to hit a guy that's much shorter than you in the head. That's just how it works. He does have good jiu-jitsu. His takedown defense lets him down at times, so that can be a problem. And he is willing to work off of his back, but he is able to get sweeps if he wants to or when he tries to. And he's also very dangerous, whether it's with elbows or, submission attacks from the back. He's got a good triangle in his own right. Honestly, though, I think Bunes is going to be the better grappler here. I could be wrong. They're both competitive on the mat, but I think Bunes is going to be the better grappler, whereas I think Johnson's going to be the better striker. For me, I'm going to have to side with Bunes for 2 reasons. 1, I think he's going to be able to get the takedowns. 2, I think once he gets the takedown, he can remain on top if he wants to because Johnson's going to be looking for stuff off his back. And I think the submission is possible for him there. So we're going to take Bunes in this one. He's a big underdog from what last I saw. So, do with that what you want, but see you guys in the next fight. Our next matchup here, we have Punahele Soriano taking on Uros Medic in the welterweight division. Medic is 3-2 in his last 5, 2-3 for Soriano. For this one here, Medic is going to be the more pure striker. He's got solid striking with a ton of speed in his strikes, a very dynamic attack, good kicks, works his range extremely well, and will work the body as well. On the other side for Soriano, he's a good striker too. He has pretty decent power, very durable, and he's got good movement on the feet. He is also able to mix in the wrestling. He's got good wrestling with good takedowns, good transitions. He doesn't do as well off of his back, so if somebody wants to offensively wrestle him, he does struggle a bit, but I don't think he's got to worry about that with Medic. We're going to get a striking match here. From my understanding, that's what both guys want to do by default. Now, like I said, Soriano in his last fight really leaned on that wrestling more. If he wants to do that here, I think that's his best path, but I think he's going to get sucked into the striking match with Medic, and I think that's going to be his downfall. So we're taking Uros Medic to get this one done in a striking fight. Let me know what you have in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next fight. This is probably the most exciting fight on the card from a prospect perspective, if you ask me. We have Austin Bashi taking on Christian Rodriguez. This is in the featherweight division. Now, for Christian Rodriguez, he's 4-1 in his last 5 fights. Austin Bashi, 5-0. He's still undefeated at 13-0 on the career. Hot prospect, making the UFC debut. We've seen this before. Christian Rodriguez is the type of guy that goes in there and beats the undefeated prospects that they bring to the UFC. I don't know why they keep doing this, but Bashi's the next one to try to take that test. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Bashi said that he wanted this fight because of that. For Christian Rodriguez, dude's a good striker. He's got plenty of power. He's got pretty good striking defense, believe it or not. It's something you don't notice until you look at the numbers and you go, wow, this guy doesn't really get hit a lot. I think it's because he's so good at mixing his martial arts that it makes it hard for guys to corral him and start landing good shots on him. Good movement, good volume, good combinations, and he often lands the leg kick at the end of his combinations. So he'll come up with the punches and then slam the kick at the end. We see a lot of fighters do that. It's a good move to hit guys as they're going away, or even just throw the kick just to kind of get their hands to drop. So, give them something to think about, things like that. Maybe you start the combination right back up again if you can get a certain reaction out of that leg kick. So for Rodriguez, does a really good job mixing all that together. His grappling is solid as well. The dude's got good submission defense. We've seen this guy really fight out of some stuff, avoid some stuff. Got good sweeps, good scrambles, but he does get taken down a bit, and that could be a problem for him here. He's fighting Austin Bashi. Austin Bashi's a good striker. He's got good kicks, the front kick in particular. He does feint his takedown to land the lead hook. That's a good move for him because his takedowns, they really do garner a response because his takedown ability is great. We'll talk about that in a minute. Keeps a high guard, something you like to see, especially from a guy that's primarily a grappler. But the grappling, this dude's a strong grappler. He's got very good takedowns. He's got a variety of them. He'll chain wrestle. He works to advance his position immediately, gets to the back, controls, very opportunistic in his submissions. This guy's got a good cage push as well. So if he can't get the takedown initially, he'll push you up against the cage. And from there, he'll either just take your back while you're standing or he'll start working for takedowns. It doesn't matter to him. If you give him the back standing, that's fine. He can still work from there. He puts a pace on guys that makes it really tough for them to keep up. Honestly, I think Bashi's the real deal. I think he gets this one done. This is an extremely tough test for him in his debut, but Bashi is the real deal from what I can tell. Let me get Austin Bashi as the pick, and I will see you guys in the next fight. So what's up next? Chris Curtis takes on Roman Kopylov. Kopylov is 4-1 in his last 5. We got 2-2 in a no contest for Chris Curtis. When we look at this matchup here, it's a couple of strikers. There is grappling that I've written on the board. We're not focusing on that. This is a striking match between between Kopylov, who is a kickboxer, and Curtis, who is more of a boxer. Now, when we look at Kopylov's skill set, he has solid striking, a tight defense, clean, straight shots, a solid jab. He works his combinations and singles together very well. So, he'll mix up with a nice single shot and then, he'll put a couple of shots together and then back to the singles, and he'll mix it up so that he keeps you guessing. Works the body well, kicks to all levels. So the kicks to the body, the punches to the body, feints extremely well. Could he mix in the grappling? I don't think he's going to have much success. Let's be honest. Chris Curtis has some of the best takedown defense in the division. I don't imagine Kopylov, who isn't a wrestle-first kind of fighter, is going to be able to get him down. Yes, he's got guys to the mat before. It's not likely in this one. So we're not going to worry about that. Curtis' takedown defense is great. For Curtis, solid striker as well, but it's more boxing. You don't see a ton of kicks out of Chris Curtis. He's got a defensive shell that he uses extremely well. People will think he's down on the numbers, but none of those shots are really landing clean. They're hitting the arm, stuff like that. So then he can counter strike extremely well. He has extremely good counters with tons of power. He punches to the body very well. And he's got good, tight combinations in his boxing. The problem is he kind of plots forward and boxes. Here's how this is going. This is what I see, right? It's going to be a slow start for Curtis as always. He's going to have more cardio at the end. Kopylov's probably going to win the first round. Curtis is probably going to win the third round. However, here's the deal. Kopylov's going to have to keep this at full kickboxing range the whole time, because if he starts to let Curtis get inside, Curtis is definitely the better pocket fighter. And I think he's going to start landing those body shots hard. I think he's going to suck on a gas tank of a guy like Kopylov. I think Curtis can get either a late finish or win a decision by taking rounds 2 and 3, and he's a huge underdog. We're taking Chris Curtis as a big underdog. I won't be surprised if Kopylov can range kickbox for 3 rounds, get the win that way. I wouldn't be surprised at all. Or even just win the first 2 rounds by doing that and then just survive the third. I wouldn't be surprised at all. But if you're going to give me Curtis as a massive underdog, a guy that I think can eventually close the distance, especially in the third, has power all the way through all 3 rounds, no problem, I got to take Curtis. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Tell me I'm done for picking Curtis again. I get it. But we're taking him here. Let me know what you think. I'll see you next. Middleweight match here. Abdulrazak Alhassan takes on Cesar Almeida. Now, Almeida, he's only had 7 MMA fights. He's 4-1 in his last 5. He's taken on Abdulrazak Alhassan. Now, Alhassan, 2-2 in a no contest in his last 5. The no contest, it was a Cody Brundage fight. You know how it goes sometimes. Anyway, in this one here, Cesar Almeida, he's going to be the better striker. He comes from a kickboxing background, pretty high level there. Solid striker with good power, good combinations, counter strikes really well, works the body really well. But his grappling, he's got decent initial takedown defense. Now, I understand people are going to give me a hard time about that, and they're going to say, oh, his takedown defense sucks. Kopylov took him down. Kopylov was also landing on the feet against him, so it opened up the takedowns. If you're just going to go out there and shoot takedowns and not set it up, he does have decent takedown defense. We saw that in the Budka fight. So don't argue with me too much. Just go back, rewatch those, and say, okay, decent doesn't mean I said excellent. Get those two words figured out, okay? Now, Decent ground and pound as well. If he can get on top, if he ends up on top somehow in a scramble, maybe he drops you and then chases you down, he doesn't fully commit to the grappling to start landing ground and pound, which is something that gives him better advantage there because he can go back to his striking on the feet if you start to get back up or if his opponent starts to get back up. Hopefully you're not fighting Cesar Almeida. Now, Nurullo Al-Hassan, he's the better MMA fighter here because he is, well, he's been an MMA fighter for a lot longer. I mean, look, 7 fights. Dude's got 12 wins, not just fights. Dude's got 6 losses. Those aren't what you want. He's got the no contest in there, but he still had a lot more experience in MMA, so that is something that you like to see. He's a good striker with a ton of power and an absolutely devastating leg kick. His leg kick could be a problem for a guy like Almeida here, even though Almeida's the better striker. It's just very deadly. As the fight goes on, though, Al-Hassan's striking output drops significantly. He slows down. He does not look as good in the third as he did in the first. Usually, he's had one fight where he did, but either way, point is, decent grappling, and it's mostly from the cage push. If he gets you up against the cage, he can wear on you there. He can start doing what he needs to do, and I think that comes from his judo background. The guy apparently knows judo pretty well. We just don't see much of it in the cage, simply the cage push. Now, for me in this one, Almeida is a massive favorite. He's a big-time favorite, like minus 300-ish around there favorite. I want to take Al-Hassan so bad. I think I'm going to take Al-Hassan here. I want to take a shot on the pick for Al-Hassan for 2 reasons. One, I think he can land a powerful shot and hurt Almeida, much like Roman Kopylov did. Once he does that, I think if he doesn't finish him, which if Al-Hassan hits you, he could put you out. That's just what happens. But if he doesn't, I think I'm going to trust that he has the wherewithal to cage push the rest of the fight and win a boring decision, even if he has to lose the 3rd round. Let me know what you guys think. He's a big underdog. We're going to take a shot on him. Tell me I'm dumb if you think I'm dumb. That's okay, too. I'll see you in the next fight. Got a welterweight matchup. Santiago Ponzinibbio takes on Carlston Harris. Carlston Harris is 3-2 in his last 5 fights, 1-4 for Ponzinibbio. That's a rough run, but he's fought some pretty good competition, so you take it with a grain of salt, am I right? For Carlston Harris, he's a good striker. Not great. It's a little it's a little wild, if you ask me. And so sometimes it can look sloppy, but when he hits you, he's got power and he's got good volume. Like, for example, yes, he got knocked out by a Chaos Williams. Chaos Williams could knock out an elephant, okay? It happens. But in that fight, his strikes were looking kind of weird, but they were landing until he got knocked out. So it's kind of a different style, but he does it well enough. His grappling, though, that's where he has an advantage in this matchup. He's a solid grappler with a very good body lock takedown, and he's got very opportunistic submissions, particularly his anaconda choke, but front chokes in general. Dude's got an incredibly tight squeeze. Once he gets around that kind of like head and under the arm or under the arm up to the head, whether he's going for Darce, anaconda, whatever, you're not going anywhere. You're probably going to sleep. The dude's got an incredible squeeze. His grappling is going to be his path here, but if he decides to stand and strike, Santiago Ponzinibbio is a solid striker. This dude is very good with the movement. He kind of bounces in and out of the pocket, does what he needs to do there. Solid leg kick, plenty of volume, plenty of power. If it's just a pure technical striking matchup, we're going to see Ponzinibbio winning this all day, but I don't think that's the case. I think Carlston Harris gets the win. I think he can hurt Ponzi on the feet. I think he can also mix in the takedowns, and I think if he gets this fight to the mat, I think that's it for Ponzinibbio. So we're taking Carlston Harris. I feel pretty good about this one. Let me know what you guys think, and I will see you in the next fight. Folks, it's time for the first main event of the year. If you haven't liked this video already, and if you've been enjoying yourself and maybe you learned something, please do that for me. Like the video. It does go a long way at helping the channel, and I appreciate it. So thank you. Let's break down the main event. Mackenzie Dern takes on Amanda Ribas in a rematch. This is a strawweight main event, 5-rounder, and like I said, it is a rematch where Amanda Ribas won the first one. Now, when we look at this fight here, both of these ladies are 2-3 in their last 5, which is surprising because when you look at both of the two of them and just like without thinking about it, you would think that maybe one of them, I'm not going to say who off the top of my head, but you know who you're thinking about, is having more success as of recent. But in the last 5 fights, it's become a wash. The records are very similar, just recently and overall. So it's a compelling matchup on paper, and the rematch makes sense. But if you watch the first fight, it wasn't super close. But when we look at the fight now, how have they developed? How are things looking for them as they move forward? For Amanda Ribas, she's a solid grappler. She's got good throws to get the fight to the mat, very good takedown defense. If she gets on top, she's got good top pressure, and she's got slick transitions as well. But, is the grappling going to be her best path here? Probably not. She does have good striking, though, and that's going to be the pass she's going to want to use here, because using the takedown defense coupled with her striking, that's going to be how she's going to get a win if she does get a win, because she's got good volume. She strikes well to all levels. She's got a good slip and counter style where she just gets her head out the center line and throws back as she comes forward. Now, that is good and bad, because it does result in her not always slipping the shot correctly and gets hit. So, you know, when you're trying to slip punches, you're playing a game of basically like head-on collisions, and you're just trying to near miss each car being each punch. So for her, when she tries to slip these shots and counter back and come forward, it's hard to do sometimes, especially because, you know, like it's MMA and these fighters are throwing punches, kicks, knees, elbows, shooting in takedowns, things like that. It makes it tough just to slip shots and come forward, right? It's not a boxing fight where you're only worried about hands. You're worried about a lot of stuff here. So it makes it tricky. Her striking defense is falling apart at times, but she is going to be the better striker here. We look at Mackenzie Dern. If she gets this fight to the mat, she should have an advantage. She's a high-level jiu-jitsu player. She has a very large toolbox there. Her control is very good. She's got a good submission arsenal. She can attack submissions from everywhere. She transitions extremely well. But the problem is, and this has been her problem the whole time, she lacks open mat takedowns. She has to just kind of eat shots with her face as she comes forward, get a hold of her opponents, and drag them to the mat, and doesn't always work. If she had open mat takedown ability, Mackenzie Dern, maybe not undefeated, but the girl would not have 5 losses. She'd have like 1 or 2, because her grappling is so good, but she just struggles to get fighters to the mat. Her striking, it's decent. She's improved, and then she'll resort back to not being good. And it's frustrating to watch, honestly. Her striking defense is terrible, but thankfully for her, she's durable. She can take a punch, but you just got to like watch sometimes and be like, man, what? Who is coaching Mackenzie Dern and telling her, hey, we're just going to keep doing jiu-jitsu and not really worry about anything else? Or occasionally she'll like work some, you know, some striking stuff and then just resort back to eating shots with her face and diving for these awful takedowns. I don't know. She's extremely good when she gets the fight to the mat, and she can absolutely win this fight if she does that. But I don't think it's going to happen. I've got to take Amanda Ribas for the fact that, 1, she already knows she has the blueprint to beat Mackenzie Dern. She's done it before. 2, her stylistics matchup here, Amanda Ribas has that ability to win this fight just by stopping takedowns, staying striking. I don't think Mackenzie Dern is going to outstrike Amanda Ribas, and I don't think she's going to have success over 5 rounds getting her to the mat very often. I have to go with Ribas here. It's just the way it looks. Dern has the potential to get a win if she can get the fight to the mat. She is live for a finish. She is live for controlling 3 out of the 5 rounds. I just don't see it. But if you've enjoyed this video, like I said, like it. I do appreciate that. Check out some of the other stuff I did during the break. Some of the content I made. It's just kind of, we're just throwing stuff together. Maybe Mackenzie Dern could actually learn a thing or two from the video I taught on chain wrestling. Now, I'm not a high-level wrestler by any means. I didn't wrestle in college or anything like that, but I understand some positions and some concepts. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, you know what? I'll link it here. It should be